Ladies and gentlemen, Chaos After Dark has returned for your favorite NFL podcast out there, the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Yes, it is the late Friday night. What are we doing recording this? We barely know ourselves, but we're here to give you all a roundup of the content, as you could tell by the clever title based off of the... I don't know if it was originally a book and it's just been parodied to Hell in a Handbasket ever since, but you know the challenge, Rick, around the world in however many amount of days.
Yeah, but then it's spelled with an A, not an E.
I was rushing. Give me a break.
I hate to be a grammar Albanian over here, but it's got to be a.
He censored himself. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Iceman Jurgen joining in. The Podfather is with me on this one. Justin unable to join us on this episode because he is somewhere in the mountains right now. I think not the Caucasus necessarily, but he's somewhere in the mountains right now. I think.
If Justin comes out of the mountains and he finds Cocaine Bear, I think we're in trouble.
I hope not. I hope he doesn't.
He can take me there. Why not?
But the J-Man, the master of games, is not here. Therefore, no games will be on this episode. It's going to be kind of like a straight shooting episode on this one, ladies and gentlemen. Says this is our first off, episode 109. Wild. This is going to be kind of like to an extent, quick rapid fire. I mean, some of these conversations will warrant more discussion, but this will be a bit of a rapid fire episode because we have a lot of NFL news and what was kind of for what's been a dull off season where we've had to make things happen, Rick, in terms of content wise. We actually got a lot of news this week. And of course, it's the week that Justin has to, give up technology for a 3-4 day span.
I think that's why we have a larger week of content and news this week, is because everyone knew that with Justin away, let the champions play, if you will. So
let the champions play indeed. So we're going to be here discussing everything and more that has happened under the NFL sun over the last week or so. We're going to have a good time doing it, I believe. So, Rick, I don't have anything else to intro. Shall we get to it?
Let's do it.
All right, ladies and gents, as it is going to be the return of our favorite ticker and headline news around the NFL, where it's just a bunch of different stuff happened this week, from a couple signings, a couple acquisitions made by a couple teams in the AFC, some punishments, shame on you. The shame bell is ringing somewhere for a bird team, but not for another one. We'll talk about that. And a retirement and another retirement, two different kinds of retirements for us to talk about, and certain individual got paid. So let's start with the, I think this might be the briefest of the conversation topics, honestly, Rick, because you honestly, of all these this week, this is one of the ones where I literally had zero idea that it occurred. It just completely flew under the radar for me. But Calais Campbell, his career continues, and it's going to be with the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins, a team clearly, I don't know what the proper wording would be. They knew that last season the defense, while good, it still needed improvement, but especially with the injuries that they suffered on the defensive side last year, and especially towards the end of the season on that front four. Bradley Chubb getting injured in one of the final two games of the season. I forget if it was the season finale against Buffalo, but he definitely got injured at the tail end of the season. And Jalen Phillips also fell victim to the injury bug last year. So a couple defensive linemen like that out. I believe Chubb will be ready. I don't know immediately off the top of my head if Phillips will be, or maybe it'll be a slow start for him. But Calais Campbell will indeed be signing for, or has signed with the Miami Dolphins. And like I said, Rick broke this to me, so I'll let Rick give his thoughts on this first.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Campbell's been around the league since 2008 when he first came into the league as a non-starter in Arizona, but he's bounced around between Arizona. He had a couple of really good, solid years in Jacksonville, and then 3 years in Baltimore where he was okay. I mean, he tailed off production a little bit, but then last year in Atlanta, while it wasn't the greatest year statistically wise, it was a resurgence in the fact that for the first time, since 2019, he played in every game and he started every game for the Falcons defense that definitely needed them. He had 56 tackles, 32 solos, 6.5 sacks. So he got over 100 sacks for his career. And he also recorded the safety for the third time in his career. So, he's proven that at the age that he is, which is 37 years old, he'll be 38 on September the 1st. He's still got a motor about him. So going to a Dolphins team that, as you mentioned, this is a squad that was beset by a lot of injuries last year. We don't know if all these guys are going to come back, but if you have a depth piece like Calais Campbell there to kind of shift things along and help you out, I think it really does help out in a way. It helps out that those guys, they don't have to come back right away. like, with injuries, it can be a little tricky because sometimes the recovery period doesn't, happen as fast as you'd like it to be. Not everyone, for lack of a better term, is John Cena in 2008 in the Royal Rumble. You can't come back after 3 months of a triceps injury. Sometimes it takes a little longer than that. Sometimes the body just doesn't heal properly. So, if Bradley Chubb takes a little bit longer to heal, or if he's not at 100%, you got Calais Campbell there to kind of spell him and get some production on there and keep this Dolphins defense relevant going into a very difficult season for them. I think this was an excellent signing. And again, Campbell had his best years in Florida with Jacksonville, granted, but maybe playing in Florida is like a thing that he just wanted to do, so it worked out.
Yeah, not a bad way to end a career. And, you mentioned it, Rick, consistency with Calais Campbell, as you said, past the century mark in career sacks this past season with his 6.5, and only one season in his career he finished the season with 0 sacks, and that was his rookie year in 2008. Like, this guy, like you mentioned, consistency in Arizona after that rookie season, no season less than, well, actually 2015 he had 5 sacks, but every other season aside from that was 5 sacks or more, or 6 sacks or more, prior to that. So, but bookending a 0 sack season and a 5 sack season was 7 sacks, 9 sacks, 7 sacks again. Jacksonville, like you said, when he really peaked in terms of his presence on a defensive line, in terms of prime of career, you could say. And Jacksonville also kind of like a peak for the franchise in those years as well. He was part of those teams with Jalen Ramsey, with Blake Bortles, who didn't completely throw his NFL career away yet, and a team that made a brief spell, made to an AFC Championship game before falling to Tom Brady. And like you said, Baltimore, Atlanta, it was Bird teams back-to-back years, but it looks like no three-peat. Actually, aside from Jacksonville, all Bird teams so far. So, all we had needed was an Eagles. Like, if he started the season this year with Seattle and he got traded to Philadelphia, I think that would have completed it. But no, he decides to go to Florida, like you said, maybe to end his career. I'm not saying this will necessarily be the last season, but I mean, there's always a chance. But there's a guy that also, I think you may have mentioned, went to the University of Miami. So
yeah,
going to play for the team of the college that he went to. This could end up being the swan song for all we know.
And it kind of helps them out too, because they had a surprise guy last year that was very quietly had a double-digit sack season. That was Zach Sealer. He was a 7th round pick out of Ferris State back in 2018. And, last year was his breakout year. The kid had, like I said, 10 sacks, 63 tackles. So you pair him alongside Calais Campbell on the other side, whose production is still there. That front four for Miami was really, aside from Wilkins, who I think is gone now, if I'm not mistaken. Christian Wilkins is no longer on that team. So that front four needed a little bit of a refresh. So you have Sealer, you have T.R. Tart, because a lot of the other guys that we can talk about on this Dolphins defense, Chubb, Phillips, Chop Robinson, they just picked up, Shaq Barrett, those are all linebackers. Yeah. So, you can line up 7 in the box all you want, but it's that front four that really can make a big difference there. And so adding another edge, with Sealer being as good as he was last year, adding an edge like Campbell, veteran presence, like I said, this division, you need all the defense you can get, because if you look at Buffalo and you look at the Jets, they're still very potent on the offense. So that can work out for them too. So listen, local boy goes home. He's from Colorado, but he went to Miami, and he had a couple good years there with the Canes, so he goes home.
Yep, absolutely. And we love a feel good returning home story. So he will be doing that, and helping out a Miami team that again, I think we've kind of pointed at it in previous episodes here over the last month and a half or so. Wide open division as of now. Like, in terms of perception, this division has the ability to be wide open, and maybe a Calais Campbell will get you a sack in the 4th quarter in one of these division games, right? Like, rotating in once that team is healthy. Like, there's no such thing. I don't think you could say it's a bad thing to add a 100 career sack player. I don't think it's possible. But that's still able to play. Like, if they had tried to sign Bruce Smith, questions, but Calais Campbell. Yeah. So, there it is. So let's tie that in together with the other defensive player that signed in this. We'll pair some stuff together, some symmetry. And again, this is honestly the other story that you kind of alerted me on, but veteran safety Tony Jefferson finishing his retirement and joining the Los Angeles Chargers. The guy that, as you mentioned, retired last season, retired before last season, was a scouting intern with the Baltimore Ravens after he had retired. And then he worked under the current Chargers general manager, Joe Horitz. And now he is going back to work for his boss, but not as not in the front office. So clearly Tony Jefferson is like, this life ain't for me. I want to get back on the field a little bit. So he is going to be a Los Angeles Charger for this 2024 season. A guy who quite the number of teams he's played on for in his career. A guy who's played for the Cardinals and the Ravens, so just like Calais Campbell right there. It missed out in 2020. I don't remember off the top of my head if that was because of injury or he was one of the players that deliberately sat out because that was the option in 2020. But he missed out in 2020. Played a handful of games for San Francisco in 2021, a handful of games for Baltimore as well in 2021. So he split that season between those two. And in 2022, he was on the Giants as a veteran presence, 9 games played, 23 tackles. So the last time he played double-digit games in a season was 2018, where he played 14 for the Ravens. So I think this is, he's going back to work for a guy that is that he's familiar with. And it's also going to be another guy he's familiar with because the current Chargers defensive coordinator was in Baltimore for 3.5 seasons alongside Jefferson. So there's a lot of familiarity there, right? And I think it's one of those things where the Chargers maybe looked at their situation and they're like, okay, we need some depth here. And I think we've said this in professional sports before. You go with what you know. And Tony Jefferson is a guy that the people in this organization know.
Yeah, well, he also had a really, really good workout, and that's what impressed the Chargers brass a lot more for a guy who was on IR, for the last couple of years, and then obviously spent that year as a scouting intern with Baltimore. I find it interesting that he's also joining a Harbaugh brother, going from one Harbaugh to the other.
And you got to believe that Jim reached out to John to get an idea of his character.
The other thing too that I think I like about this though is that last year, what was one of the things that we mentioned, the Chargers defense was woeful. It was not a very good defense, but look at the secondary that he's joining. You got Asante Samuel Jr. there leading the charge. You have Derwin James. I think Christian Fulton's trying to bounce back because he was on Tennessee for the longest time. So he's trying to get a little bounce back here. So having that veteran presence like the 32-year-old Jefferson is going to help out those younger guys a lot. Samuel was a top-tier corner. I don't care what the Pro Bowl says. He was a top-tier corner for sure, top-tier guy. And the Chargers, I think, having his facelift is going to help them out because it does provide that little extra oomph of a guy who's been around the block a bunch and who's been able to really, cement himself as a premier defensive back in this league, and again, you're hoping that there's, nothing that befalls him, but if he had a good workout, coming out of it and he looks healthy and he looks like he's ready to go, as you said, go with what you know, but depth is not a bad thing to have in the secondary, especially in that division. We talk a lot about, how it's going to go for the team. But when the team goes against those divisional games, you're facing 3 very powerful offenses there, especially in the passing game. I think you need as many secondary players as possible, as many defensive backs as possible. And so Chargers are building up in the right spot, I think.
And also just depth. Like if the Chargers do get a game this season where they're starting to blow a team out, you put Tony Jefferson in there. You can rest Derwin James. You can rest some of those guys that save them for the next week when it's probably going to be a tighter game and they need to play from minute 1 to minute 0. So
absolutely.
Again, I said it with Campbell. I'm not going to critique a team for just signing depth. You can't do that unless it's a player that is just a scrub like Ryan Tannehill, who would sign him for quarterback. It just doesn't make sense. So depth defensive signings right there made by those teams. Calais Campbell to his hometown team, Miami, and then Tony Jefferson going to a place where he knows a lot of people there, which, like I said, an impressive camp performance plus guys he knows. It was going to happen. All right, we talked about a couple bird teams there, Rick. We mentioned the Cardinals, obviously. We mentioned the Ravens with both these guys, ironically enough. The Atlanta Falcons with Calais Campbell. Well, the Atlanta Falcons made some news recently. So did the Philadelphia Eagles. Decisions were made. Tampering was looked at, the allegations of it, and one team got punished and the other did not. The Atlanta Falcons on this past Thursday, so yesterday, were docked a 5th-round pick in the 2025 draft and fined $250,000 for violating the NFL's anti-tampering, Jesus Christ, I'm struggling here, policy related to free agent signings. It was related to 3 of their signings that they had. It was improper contact with 3 players prior to the official signing, which, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if we'll let you in a secret. It's all happening before it gets signed. But it was Kirk Cousins, Darnell Mooney, and Charlie Warner were the 3 specific guys that it was pointed out when it comes to the Falcons. The Falcons GM also got fined $50,000. Poor guy. So the Falcons ended up suffering consequences there. The Eagles did not. Their one was specifically in regards to the allegations made when it came to signing Saquon Barkley. But they were cleared of those allegations. It was shown that there was no tampering, which that's a lie. But one team was going to get punished here, one team wasn't. Honestly, it could have flipped a coin for me. And Rig, this also happens because the two of us are hockey fans. Isn't it funny when July 1st happens and all those guys sign in the NHL or all those guys sign in the NBA when it's July 5th, I think is when the official first day is, whatever it is. Isn't it funny when there's all these signings that always happen on the first day of free agency?
Well, isn't it also funny that the guy who grew up in Roger Goodell's hometown is able to skate away from any anti-tampering fines while the Atlanta Falcons get docked $250,000, a draft pick, and the new GM loses $50K from his wallet? Isn't that just the bee's knees, if you will? I think, it's interesting because we had this happen with the Dolphins too a while back. But the Dolphins punishment was a lot more severe. They lost the first rounder, and Stephen Ross, I think, lost $1 million plus or something along those lines. Yeah. It's just like we always say, if you're gonna do it for one team, you have to do it for all. And you can say, oh, we reviewed all the phone logs, all the investigation. We didn't really find anything that is considered tampering. I mean, what is your definition of tampering? How is the old quote is what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. Well, how is this not sauce for both teams? Not Sauce Gardner, but the metaphorical sauce.
Yes.
I don't know. I think it's odd to say that because the Falcons may have made overtures too early to Kirk Cousins that he came to them and so therefore they're fine. Whereas the Eagles had conversations with James Franklin, the head coach of Penn State, who was Barkley's head coach, and somehow that doesn't. I mean, I get it. If you're talking about possibly, how do they play for you? What do you think? Et cetera, fine and dandy and all. But again, if you're going to have an anti-tampering policy and you're going to find one team and not another, your policy just isn't a policy. It's stupid. It's personal.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And like I alluded to, let's be real here. A lot of these signings, stuff is happening way in advance. And I'm not even talking about nowhere near hours, nowhere near days, weeks, months even. Let's be real here. When trades happen, when a guy's been unhappy for a while and he gets traded, I promise you the team he got traded to, unless it's deliberately reported when it happens, probably looked into the situation for the guy 2-3 months before the trade happened.
I also love, I just wanted to say this too, I also love this note here from the NFL that says, the Falcons were not punished more seriously because of the violations being more administrative, such as, and I quote, making travel arrangements after the players had agreed to contract terms. So if it's before contract terms are agreed upon, okay, but they already agreed on the contract. And so now you're traveling, or they're traveling to it. How is that tampering if the contract's already agreed upon? I'm sorry.
They're traveling to sign the contract.
What to use something? What textbook in the restricted section of the Hogwarts library did you find this policy in? This is ridiculous, man.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
I've seen a lot of Harry Potter clips honestly recently, so I'm very glad that you mentioned that.
Well, I do what I can.
But again, this is as we grow up and we become more media literate with everything, not even just with sports, with real life as well. Which, please, for the love of God, if there's one thing I think both of us will preach, Rick, it's media literacy, please.
Yes.
This is one of those things that when you're, I think even up to your teenage years or even early college years, you're still in your heaviness of sports fandom where it's this stuff, it doesn't bother you. It's okay, tampering, whatever. If it didn't affect your team directly, for or against, whatever the case was, you need to understand at this point, how much of this stuff happens behind the scenes and who is a part of it. Right. Whenever assistant GMs finally get their first shot, and people are well, what have they done? A lot of assistant GMs play heavy roles in trades and signings going through. If anything, sometimes assistant GMs play more of a role in a deal happening than even the general manager himself. And that's not a discredit to general managers. That's just how a professional organization like that works. That's how delegating works. The GM can't be on 20 different phone calls. The assistant GM was probably on the phone call with the team that they eventually got the offer with. I'm willing to bet the GM fielded 3 other calls before. It's that stuff where we haven't been in an organization and we aren't in one. It's why for me, like as great as interviews with like the big time athletes and big time names in sports are, I love the stories of the guys who were role players. I love the people who worked in like the analytics sections for teams or like assistant general manager, like scouting departments. Like we need more interviews like that because that to me is where a lot of the stories can come out when it comes to stuff like this.
Right.
Like it's not always from the biggest name. It's not always from the top. It's from the guys who were there. Their name isn't plastered in the headlines. Right. Like it's so to me, like that's where it comes to this stuff. Like for the NFL to say like, okay, Falcons, you're going to be charged for tampering, Eagles not. If next season or even the season after we get two more teams, I'm almost willing to bet it's going to be 50-50 again. And one will get charged for tampering, and the other will not for not tampering at all. Like,
right,
guys, we need to grow up. I'm willing to bet 90% of these contracts were tampered. Like, come on.
Next year, it's going to be the Texans and the Chiefs. The Chiefs will somehow mysteriously not get fined anything. The Texans will lose the 3rd round pick in the 2026. And it's like, really? Okay, fine. That makes sense.
And CJ Stroud will be suspended 1 game.
Yeah, of course.
It's insanity. So this is just one of those things where it's like, I saw it and I reacted to it, but then I was just like, oh, there's no reason for me to react to this. Like I've learned. I've learned when it comes to this stuff. Like, okay, tampering, sure. Like, I don't know. Like, this stuff just bothers me because it's like it's the league. It's showing that they are policing themselves.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm willing to bet every single team that signed someone this free agency, except the Dallas Cowboys because they barely signed anyone. Like, all other 31 of the other teams, like, come on, you're telling me not a single contract is tampered?
Yeah, questionable.
It's one of those things where it's like I guess it's a headline. It gives people stuff to talk about, but it's one of those we need to, as fans, I say specifically, as fans, like we need to eventually like not be tricked by it or not fall for it. Like this isn't to me. This isn't news. It's just not.
It's not.
It's manufactured. So from something that we completely tore down, realistically, to stuff that I think we'll have a little bit of fun talking about with some of these next few topics, Rick. A couple of retirements happened over the course of the last few days. Tom Brady was put in the Patriots Hall of Fame.
Yes.
His jersey is retired, and he was promised a statue to be built one day outside of Foxborough. Not surprised.
Well, listen, the only thing that I can think about is that if there's a promise of a statue, you better hope that Steve Borton's not somewhere around there, because if Sting finds out you're building a statue of somebody else, he's going to find a way to throw it in the dumpster or throw it in the garbage truck.
Very true. Very true. Just like that Seth Rollins statue.
Be careful.
I hope it's higher quality than that Seth Rollins statue.
I hope so too. I mean, that felt like it was made out of like hollow plastic or whatever. It was great.
Yeah, hollow plastic, and the insides were filled with like cardboard or something.
Yep, something like that. Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like, obviously this was inevitable. This was coming. I find it funny that this happens. I mean, yes, I know Brady only just retired. Like last year was the first year out of retirement, but I still find it funny that Belichick is no longer the head coach, technically speaking.
Yeah.
It's still funny. It's like to me, it's just there's comedy to it. There's a unintentional comedic timing with this.
Yeah, it's irony.
What a month plus that Brady's had, that roast session that he had where he's now come out after saying that he regrets it because it may affect his kids, which, Tom, I don't know if you know this. Did you never watch a roast before, bro?
Yeah. Well, I also don't know if you know this part, too. Apparently it affected Giselle so much that she broke up with her jiu-jitsu instructor boyfriend. Yeah.
I think the people like us on the internet would consider that a victory.
Giselle, I've got an Albanian over here who's single and might be looking for a Brazilian supermodel at some point. So,
Oh, Lord. Like it's one of those things where it's like, and also just Giselle being like, "Oh, infected." It's like, yeah, that's how it goes. Maybe that's
what a roast is. Not to get on my rant podium here too early, but like, do you not understand the concept of a roast? Like go back onto YouTube and look at the Dean Martin celebrity roast clips and look at how Don Rickles eviscerated everybody, and everyone's just laughing and having a grand old time of it. Like if you take life too seriously that you can't take jokes, what are you doing?
Yeah, and final thing, the point of the roast, it's supposed to be gloves are off, everything is up for like there is no such thing as he went too far. Everything is in play.
If Belichick is up there making jokes, like that it's just the gloves are all off and everyone's supposed to have a good time.
First off, them joking to Belichick about him, it's like, oh no, if Belichick can get roasted at this thing, oh no, you're going to be caught in the crossfire.
Oh,
sorry,
yeah.
not sorry.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So as we got that Tom Brady retired, it's great to see quarterbacks that deserve it being honored by their teams. I can't wait for, we're going to have a lot of quarterbacks, I think, that get honored over the next few years. Like Eli is going to get, of course, if he hasn't already, I don't know if he has off the top of my head. If he hasn't, he will be, and if he has, I missed it.
I think also Drew Bledsoe doubled down on his roast comment where he said, like, the one thing that I'll have that you will never have is that I was picked number 1 in the draft. I think he called Brady recently the worst backup quarterback ever. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, did nothing as a backup quarterback.
Lewis.
Did nothing as a backup quarterback. He took the starter's job. You're not supposed to do that. Worst backup quarterback ever.
Horrible backup job. F-.
F minus backup, A+ starter. Now, how on earth?
Those average out too.
But he gets honored. Many quarterbacks are going to be honored. I will love to see whenever this current generation of quarterbacks, these kids eventually get honored in like 10 to 15 year time. What will all of them get statues is the question. Because Rick, we're starting to be in an era where it's like tribute videos and jersey retirement and Hall of Fame consideration and statues. Like these questions get asked for all these players, and I'm like, okay, guys, can we stop? Can we stop? Like only 15%.
Listen, as a Mets fan, I think the tribute videos are a little played out because Mark Hanna was only around for 2 years and he somehow got a tribute video. Like, really?
Yeah.
Really, guys? Like Jeremy Lin gets one for the Knicks for about like a month of good play, and that's it. Like, really, guys?
Literally 1 month.
Yeah.
Granted, he did save the Spectrum and MSG deal.
Listen. It was a great month, but not great enough for a tribute video. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So. Yeah, he did. Maybe it was given to him because he saved a TV contract deal right there. Maybe that's why it's like, oh, we have to give it to him.
Well, James Dolan doesn't like to have his hand in the basketball things a little bit too much. So makes sense.
Very true.
But yeah, listen, this officially cements Tom Brady, being done with football. I believe he's going to be in the broadcast booth this fall.
I think he is. Yeah, I think
If he is, please don't be on Amazon. Because I actually want to watch a game with Tom Brady as an analyst.
So it's Fox. I think it's a Browns game. Is his first game scheduled?
Well, there is some irony in that. Belichick coached the Browns back in the '90s when Tom Brady was, in high school or whatever, or in middle school or something like that. So there's some irony there, I guess.
100%.
But also start him off with a simple game. Don't give him like the game of the week. Give him Browns, whoever it is. That way, he can kind of ease his way in. It's the anti-Matt Nagy approach to life.
I will be interested to see how good he could be at a commentator. So Tom Brady retires. Like I said, Hall of Fame jersey, all that. Can't wait for that to happen to the other deserving quarterbacks of their franchises, like Geno Smith for the Seahawks. It's going to be glorious to say the very least. Yeah. But that's not the only retirement that occurred this week, Rick. It was the most important one because the other one I don't think a lot of people cared. And the other one was it forced? ? Darren Waller retired.
Thank God. Well, I say it like this, he must have watched our show at some point and seen that he was the number 1 spot in my rant podium when I told him to make a damn decision, and he finally made a damn decision. So I will take credit for that, New York Giants fans. You're welcome, by the way. But at the same time, too, now the Giants can actually focus on, building up their offense because they have Daniel Bellinger there and they drafted Theo Johnson. Now you can work with those guys on the spectrum of, is he coming back? Is he not coming back? Why did he make that video? Why does that girl look like Kelsey Plum in the video? Did he really research that whole thing? Like, it's just, and again, I don't want to say it like this, but I'm going to. Mm-hmm. Talk about a disappointing career, if you think about it, for Darren Waller. Like, a guy who, as we mentioned a couple weeks ago, is the Raiders' all-time leader in receptions in a single season. Like, to go to the Giants and just sputter out, you don't like saying this, but it kind of makes you think Josh McDaniels was right. And the minute that you say Josh McDaniels was right about anything is the minute that we can all just close down shop and go away and live in a padded cell in Switzerland for the rest of our lives, basically.
Correct.
But he was right in getting rid of Waller when he did. Not at the timing of it, obviously. The timing was really rough, but
Well, did Josh McDaniels know that marriage was going to fail, that he didn't care about trading him the day of because at the end of the day it was going to fail? Was Josh McDaniels right twice?
Listen,
I don't know if I want to be a part of this timeline anymore.
I was going to say that can Tilda Swinton come down here and take this Infinity Stone out and give us a different timeline, an alternate one, please? again, like he had a decent career in with the Raiders, and then just towards the end, I guess the writing was on the wall. And after the first season, when he basically went missing for the Giants, like he didn't do anything else. So now he's out to make terrible rap music, I guess.
Terrible indeed.
Yeah.
To say the very least. But no, especially like one thing I'll say about Waller's career, like you mentioned, the single season receptions record for the Raiders, which I can only imagine they're going to try to break that this season on purpose. Like when it comes to Waller, this is a guy who was a late round draft pick in his career, right? 6th rounder, and barely played his first 2 years, got suspended for a year from the NFL due to substance abuse, worked his way back into the league, comes back-to-back seasons of over 1,100 yards, a 90 reception season, the 107 receptions that we've alluded to, and then 2021, a little bit of injury issues, but still a good season, relatively speaking. And then 2022 starts to fall off more than 2023. Just like 552 yards is not bad, 1 touchdown, and it just kind of felt like he was a non-factor more often than not. Maybe part of it, like he played 12 games. Maybe was he hurt more than what we alluded to, and he maybe should have missed more than just 5 games. I don't know, but like you said, like even for like forgetting just the Raiders part of it, like with him setting the record, just like a guy who he had to work his way into the league as a 6th round pick, and he had to work his way back from a 1-year suspension. Which how many guys, Rick, like off the top of our heads, could we think of came back from those 1-year suspensions and put up seasons like he put up? He put up back-to-back seasons of top tight end production. Like I can't think of too many other guys that came back from the substance abuse suspensions and were great.
Yeah, I mean, Calvin Ridley last year, kind of.
But that wasn't substance abuse. I mean,
it was a year suspension. It was a year off from football. So I mean,
true.
Yeah, it's he wasn't really a factor in Baltimore, and then he went to Oakland. He had 2 very good years with the Raiders, and then, like you said. But those 2 years, I think, were just aberrations. I mean, those are the only 2 years that he played 16 games.
Mm-hmm.
And then, he just couldn't stay on the field and be healthy. And, I think part of that, too, was that, he was, at 6'6", 245, he's a little bit more of a slender tight end than you would expect. Like, he was never really a good, like, blocker, I want to say. He was more of a better receiver, if you will.
Right.
And for a tight end, you kind of, especially with the Giants in that system, with the way they were wanting to run with Barkley and with Jones and with Brightwell, you got to be able to do both. And Daniel Bellinger can do both, but Darren Waller was never really that guy, and it hurt him in the end. And again, like all those injuries, it accumulates over time, and there comes a point, as Joe Burrow said, this week, there comes a point when you got to understand your football mortality, and the more the injuries pile up, the more mortal you become. And, for Waller, it was just too much.
Yeah. Chilling words, by the way, for Bengals fans to hear that from their franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
It takes a while.
And you wonder why some people ranked them as low as they did in the quarterback rankings.
This guy. Anyways, so 2 retirements this week, one of Tom Brady and remembering his legacy. I also have to imagine, do you think Tampa's going to retire his jersey in the next year or 2? Brief question before we move on. Like
maybe. He did win them a Super Bowl, so I would probably say probably, but the Glazers are just having so much trouble right now, with all their holdings in England falling through. So I think they're gonna try and recoup their losses, and then maybe not in 2 years, maybe like 3 years. Maybe do that. Maybe when he's a little bit further away from the game, because with New England it made sense because he's been away from New England for a while, but in Tampa, it ended poorly. So kind of let's wash that sting away a little bit, and maybe in 2027 or 2028 we'll retire his jersey number or whatever.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's more than fair. All right, so a couple of retirements that happened there, and from retirements, Rick, to contract talk, and let's talk about holdouts. A lot of guys holding out, which is a yearly tradition in the NFL, the tradition that keeps on giving. But plenty happened there. When it comes to holdouts, we had talked about a couple names before we got started here. Alvin Kamara being one of the ones, which again I hadn't known about first, but then after you told me, it totally makes sense because I too would want to be paid more money to have to willingly play with Derek Carr as my quarterback in any situation. So I actually don't blame him at all.
No, I mean, and again, it just is like a matter of Alvin Kamara being the guy that he is and knowing his worth. He basically he left the final practice because of this contract dispute. And like you said, yeah, he look. What do we say about Dennis Allen about the Saints? They're mid. They're meh.
Yeah.
And Kamara's got 2 years left on this deal, and it's a 5-year, $77 million deal. Back in 2020, it was signed when running backs were a commodity. Now that the perception's changed a little bit, but he's still a vital part of that offense. And you're right. I think the more I think about it, I wouldn't want to play with Derek Carr either, to be honest with you. But whatever the situation is, and again, I guess it's no guaranteed money remaining next year, and he's got almost a $19 million cap hit this year. So,
which is always the big thing for these running backs, like they want the guaranteed money, and it's
again,
the
way this position has evolved over time, they're going to want that guaranteed money now.
Yeah,
it's my money, and I need it now.
Yeah, and also if you're Kamara, like if there's one thing I especially don't blame him for pointing to, it's like look at the Saints, like just offensive play calling, like look at it from an offensive play calling expected and what has transpired with that team. Like we know Pete Carmichael and the travesty it was to have him call offensive plays over the last couple of seasons. Yeah. Like, but Kamara specifically, like you mentioned 2020. So 2020, he had 16 rushing touchdowns and 5 receiving touchdowns. So 21 total touchdowns, right? Rushing touchdowns in the season since then, 4, 2, and 5 last year. Receiving touchdowns since then, 5, 2, and 1. Somehow he still got over 1,000 total yards from scrimmage, which I don't know how he did that with that garbage offense, but that just goes to show there's still some talent there. Yeah. And like this is a guy like he's able to put up these numbers. Like you could say like, oh, he missed his time. He missed 4 games, which I think was suspension last year. I don't even think it was because of injury. It was all because of the suspension.
There was an off the field incident in Las Vegas. Then he missed the first 3 games of the year, I think, due to that. Yeah.
And he finally, like, I guess they sat him for an extra wonder. But it's like he hasn't played a full season since his rookie year. But in 15 games in 2018, he put up 14 rushing touchdowns, and then in 15 games again in 2020, he put up 16 rushing touchdowns. That's pretty good for production for a guy who misses like an extra game, like a game or two every year.
Yeah, not to mention that in back-to-back years in 2020 and 2021, he was also a decent option out of the backfield catching passes. He caught 10 touchdown passes combined over those 2 seasons. So, he's a good weapon for the Saints offense to have. And now that Clint Kubiak's the new offensive coordinator, it's a different scheme. So he profiles well to fit into it. But, I think the way that the dominoes fall with contracts is so interesting because this is primarily because of Christian McCaffrey's contract deal.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for that, Kamara would probably be one of the highest paid running back or somewhere along those lines. But now that McCaffrey got his money, Kamara wants to rework that contract to be to say, hey, I've got 2 years left on this. I want to be here. I want my money. So let's rework the deal. The Saints just are moving slowly on that end. And that's kind of what's hurting them in the end of the day.
And especially because, like, for years now, the Saints have suffered from the salary cap hell that they put themselves into for the final years of Drew Brees.
Yeah.
And then signing Derek Carr to that contract. Like, I am an advocate that running back should be given better for the amount of work that they have to do. Yeah. And the fact that everyone is like, no, you shouldn't pay them. Like, Alvin Kamara, man, he's proven it. He's proven that he can do something. And if it's not going to be with the Saints next year, oh well. Like over 10,000 career yards between rushing and receiving.
Yeah,
like and it's pretty close. It's like over 5,800 rushing, over 4,200 receiving. Like this is the definition of a balanced back.
And it's not a It's not like a parallel, I think. But I'm sure you also saw the news too about Juwan Johnson, their tight end.
Yeah,
that he's going to have foot surgery. He said that he'll be back before the beginning of the season, but if your top tight end option isn't there, you might think you want to shore up another spot where you have a reliable pass catcher, and that would be Kamara. So, the logic tells you sign the guy or, make him happy because, listen, I mean, Jamal Williams is a good foil, but, I don't know if you want – the last time the Saints had a running back named Williams, it didn't really go so well for them.
Indeed. And last note I'll say with Kamara, just in terms of like the Saints and like, Clint Kubiak needing to get it right here. And hopefully he does, obviously. I always want the young coordinators to do well. First 4 seasons in New Orleans, 700 or more receiving yards in 3 of those 4 seasons for Kamara. Last 3 years, sub 500 receiving yards every single time. It's one of those things like he hasn't dipped in production. It's just they haven't figured out a way to get him the ball more or scheme it better. So we'll see. Receptions has gone down to Jesus Christ, everything with these things. So like we'll see what happens on that end of things. And a couple other guys also holding out. You can talk about this now. Newly minted Jets fan once again. Aaron Rodgers missing out at the end of minicamp, which I saw like he was given permission with the from the team apparently was the case. So like that I don't really care to read too much into it. If he was given permission, if it was allegedly, if it's told that it's allegedly something serious, okay, fine. Like I'm not gonna make a stink about it. But Hassan Reddick, I think, is the more interesting one. Rick.
Yeah, this is interesting because after the trade from the Eagles to the Jets, there wasn't really a whole lot of news regarding Hassan Reddick. Because this is a contract situation. The guy wants a new deal. He makes $15 million annually right now, which you think is a pretty good number until you read that Nick Bosa, the Jaguars, Josh Allen, Brian Burns are all at $28 million a year or more. And that's a deal that Reddick, I think, wants. And it's interesting that Reddick went to the Jets. The Eagles signed Bryce Huff from the Jets and paid him $17 million annually after the great year that he had last year. So, he's holding out. And, because of that, the Jets, this past year, this past week, rather, they signed Takaris McKinley, who was a first-round guy out of the Falcons, who was drafted in 2017, was kind of bounced around a little bit. But again, it's kind of like, well, if we traded for this guy Hassan Reddick and he's not going to be here, let's, fill in another role. So McKinley could be a guy that adds a spot, because if Reddick doesn't get the contract he wants, and quite frankly, I think you and I agree, he deserves it. He's a very talented player. My thing is that, again, the Jets put themselves in a bit of a pickle this year because of how much they have to pay Aaron Rodgers this year alone. Because the way that he restructured his deal last year, if you remember, I think he was only paid, $1,200,000.
Yeah, something.
Everything was deferred to this year, where he's getting paid like $108 billion this year alone for the contract. So, it's risky, and it's a blow to the Jets because, again, this is a guy who can really get good production value, and him holding out. He put on Twitter, "Don't believe the contract or the negotiations of the media or whatever the case is." But again, is that just him saving face, or is that him telling the truth? Come out and say it, or get the deal done and get on the field and get into OTAs, or get into mini camps.
Yeah. And honestly, to me, at the end of the day, and again, media literacy, guys, please. I don't necessarily hold it against guys as often anymore. Or I don't think I ever really did, even growing up. But like guys holding out for deals, like you're talking about Hassan Reddick, a guy who the first 3 seasons of his career, I think you could take his total career sacks combined in his first 3 seasons. I don't even think he touched double digits in just the first 3 years of his career. This was a guy that was his NFL career was on the brink, and has responded with 4 straight seasons of double-digit sacks. Signed a very brief deal with the Carolina Panthers, goes to Philly, does extremely well, part of a team that makes it to a Super Bowl. Like, he should be paid. He should 100% be paid. Like, this is one of those things where I don't blame him for wanting to be paid. My only thing would be like, okay, like some of the guys that we just mentioned there, it's like they're getting paid, they're in their mid-20s, he's about to hit 30. Like, maybe the term is something and maybe the exact AAV, but like, could we get a shorter term deal but still that high AAV? Can both parties just be happy with this? Like, I think that's the thing the Jets need to work on when it comes to this, because like, dude, like, if you're the Jets, how many years are you going to get a crack at this? 2 at most with Rodgers?
I mean, as we've talked about, there are windows. There are windows of opportunity in this league that are fleeting, and you're right. The Jets are in that mode where this window is pretty rapidly closing. This is a really good chance for them to make some waves. And again, how long does Rodgers have left, and how long does this core have? And Garrett Wilson's contract's going to come up. His rookie deal's going to come up pretty soon. So Vera Tucker's deal is going to come up pretty soon. There are names here that need to get signed, or else, this Jets team will just go back to irrelevancy. So.
And both those guys, like Elijah Vera Tucker, versatile guy. He's been on multiple spots. He can be a starter, like in just any one spot. Like you're seeing what offensive linemen are getting paid, both interior and of course the tackles. and you have Garrett Wilson. You're seeing what the wide receivers are getting paid, and like Garrett Wilson would have a right to be like, well, I would have better stats if we had better quarterbacks.
Yeah, and
Like-
and Sauce too, Gardner, same thing. You know, having an embarrassment of riches is great until you got to pay everyone.
Yep.
You know, that's the reason to go back to ancient history. That's the reason that Caesar had his failings.
Yes.
Octavian had his issues too. Was because when they eventually turned around, the Roman soldiers said, we were owed 10 years of wages. Where's our money? It's like, oh well, how about one more campaign, guys? let's go take North Africa one more time.
And like just history in general, like empires fall for a reason. They expand, they expand, they expand. They have everything, and at some point, it costs a lot to maintain it.
Yes, it does.
And this is one of those cases where I don't want to say it because I think it would be cruel to think about it, but is the Jets window going to close before it even had a chance to open?
I mean, listen, you hope for at least more than 4 plays with Aaron Rodgers, right? Let's get to 5.
Yeah, let's get to 5 this year.
Or you know what's probably even better for the Jets in all jokingly and kind of honesty, a 3 and out on the first drive. That way he gets off the field.
Yes, keep him healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep him healthy. All right, a couple more bits of news here for us to get to before we get to the end of the episode. Washington, busy bees. They've been finally signing up their rookies. It feels like the last few years is the first time in a while that we're getting rookies signing, but it's not like haggling over dollars because of the CBA. It's haggling over contract language, which, once again, I say this as NHL fans, I don't blame, because like the language in these rookie deals, like some of these GMs try to get one over on these guys to make them not get all their rookie benefits. It's happened in the NHL a number of times. I mentioned Toronto real quick. Mitch Marner was a guy, he got screwed over on the rookie bonuses and the rookie contract language for himself compared to some of his other compatriots that he was signed and drafted into the league alongside, right? So this is one of those things where it's like the big thing when we see these rookie first-round picks, they don't sign right away. They want the contract language to be up to stuff. They want to get their money. For some of these guys, like I don't want to forebode this. Some of these guys, this might be the only contract they get, or the only multi-year one they get, if we're being realistic. So, like, yeah, make sure everything is up to snuff. That's what the agents are there for. Like, make sure everything's up to snuff, because at the end of the day, like, this could be the one big jackpot.
Well, I mean, unless you're Lamar Jackson and you want to represent yourself.
Well, there's that. But no, Jane Daniels' deal was signed earlier today, and you'd also mentioned like their other picks as well. Like all their first round picks should have been locked in and signed in when it comes to their rookie deals. So
yeah, their top 3 picks from this past draft: Ben Sinnott, I believe Robinson, the offensive lineman. The second and third rounders were signed today, and then Daniels' contract was signed, $37.75 million, all guaranteed. And it includes a $24.3 million signing bonus. And so if you go through the list of the first-round picks, there's only one guy in the top 5 who hasn't signed his contract yet, and that's Caleb Williams. So, there are a couple other guys in the latter part of the top, actually the last 3 picks in the top 10, Penix, Odunze, and McCarthy, also unsigned at this very moment. But, it just, again, Caleb Williams' contract is going to be an interesting one to look at, because I'm sure seeing Daniels get just under $40 million, he's going to be like thinking to himself, maybe a little more than that.
And also again, because it's set with the CBA, it can only be so much more. It's probably going to be almost the exact same, if not maybe a couple $100,000 more.
Yeah.
But it's all about it's going to be all about the language in terms of injury bonuses. With workouts and stuff like that. That's the key here. And I'm not surprised that Caleb Williams is waiting. Like, he would want the guys that were drafted very close alongside him in May and Daniels, because they set the standard, their language, and then his agent would be like, well, these guys that you could have picked got this. Why aren't you going to give it to the guy you actually picked?
It's also the Bears. I mean,
that's it.
There's a lot of gymnastics that are being done in Chicago right now trying to figure things out. Because again, Odunze's not signed either, so your top 2 first-round picks are not signed at the moment. So
get to it, Chicago.
Get to it. Chop, chop.
Get to it, indeed. So you mentioned it, having to go through, gymnastics to get those deals done, the language and stuff. There's a team that has settled the gymnastic routine and got their guys signed. Now, while the wrestling company owned by the son of the owner is an absolute shambles, the quarterback situation is not so much. The Jacksonville Jaguars signed Trevor Lawrence, and Rick, they made him a very handsomely paid gentleman.
5-year extension, $275 million,
$200
$200
million
million
guaranteed.
guaranteed, and $142 million guaranteed at signing, fully.
Yep.
Now, does he deserve it? Yeah, I'd say he deserves.
That's the going rate. That is the going rate right there for franchise
It
quarterback.
matches Joe Burrow's league-leading contract and total value and average annual salary. He's getting $55 million a year, basically. It hasn't been as smooth for him. It hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows in Duval County, but he's a guy that came in with a lot of hype coming out of college. He proved it pretty well in his second season because the first season was a bit of a miss, but again, that's not his fault. That was Urban Meyer's fault. And then last year, he stepped back a little bit. He didn't have the greatest of years, but, it's more of a case of, seeing where this division is, seeing that, the quarterbacks are being paid, locking up your franchise guy. And again, Jacksonville, you're happy with Lawrence. So, pay him what you think he deserves. What I do think is interesting, and I know we'll talk about this in later episodes too, when Justin comes back from the mountains, is how this is going to affect a certain other quarterback in Dallas. Because I've seen reports so far that Dak Prescott is going to want a value of $60 million a year.
Yeah.
And I don't believe the Cowboys are willing to pay him that much money, barring a 6,000-yard season with no interceptions and a Super Bowl, but we ain't playing Madden on easy mode.
Right.
We're not doing that. So that's going to be a really interesting case because all these younger guys that have had these bigger contracts, and even Mahomes having his contract reworked, they're still making a ton of money in average value every year. And so, Prescott's going to want that too. But for Lawrence, it's the right deal. It's the right call. He's loyal to Jacksonville. He loves that area. They love him. You just hope that he gets them a couple more divisional titles because CJ Stroud is looking like the real king in that division right now.
Indeed. That's going to be big. Now that he's been paid to be the man there, you got to be the man of the AFC South. And we need to see Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud, and Anthony Richardson, hopefully, if he can develop. The three of them duke it out for that division for years to come. I think it'd be very interesting. And then Tennessee is just in fourth place the entire time. That would make the picture perfect. As I'm reading the article here, Rick, I want to point out two things about it. One funny and one, it makes sense. I'll point out the it makes sense part first. Like the Jags started 8-3 last year, and it was towards the end of that stretch, or even in the middle of it, when he was starting to really, the injuries were getting to him, battling a concussion and ankle and shoulder injuries over the last 6 weeks of the season when they just completely fell out of it. Like I think people always point to injuries. It's one of two ways to react. It did play a legitimate role, or you're just making excuses. So grow up. It's not just making excuses. Hot take: when your head, shoulder, and foot are all hurting, not fun. Not fun if you're just working a regular job. Now imagine your job is to potentially get hit by 250, 275, 300, 325 pound people. No, we're not doing that for a living. This guy is, however. And this is one of those things where he has shown it, like you said, it fell off a bit this year. But I think I mentioned this in one of the previous episodes, but Doug Peterson kind of took a step back this season in Jacksonville. Some of the stuff wasn't working. And Doug Peterson, to me, is a coach where early in his tenure is the best of it. It shows, right? It tends to be early in his tenure when everything's going good. Later in his tenure, whether it starts with locker room conversations internally or externally, are teams figuring out his scheming and can he not adapt now that it's been a couple of years? Doug Peterson has shown that in multiple situations now, right? So to me, it's going to be a case where can they look at what happened last year? Can they recover from it? This team started out strong for a reason. I don't think you fluke your way to 8-3. I think it's very difficult. I mean, except the Tennessee Titans, but I don't think you fluke your way to a good start like that. I think there's still something there in Jacksonville. They do need to work out some of the things there, but I do ultimately believe that, I think we both said it, this is the going rate for the franchise quarterback right now. And a lot of franchise quarterbacks over the last year, 2 years have gotten paid. This is the next one. This is the next one. He has been deemed by his franchise to be the guy. This is what it costs to keep that guy. So that's the real part that I want to point out. This is the funny part. He is fourth all time in Jaguars history in both passing yards and touchdowns.
Oh, well,
he's already fourth.
Well, I mean, The Jags are just a funny franchise in general, man. What I also found funny was that I was reading an article that was asking for like the fans' reaction to it. Went to a barbershop, and they asked the barber. He's like, "Well, I'm a Dolphins fan, but it's fine. He's a good player." I'm like,
Why'd you include it?
"Yeah, why'd you include him?
Bad journalism right there.
Let the man do his job and cut people's hair."
Right. Ask the patrons at the barbershop.
Exactly.
Are you a fan? No, so that's what I was thinking. And you mentioned Dak, and I think this is going to be for more discussion when we do eventually talk about it with Justin when he comes back from his Hannibal type recreation in the Alps right now. But I think elephant's not included with Justin's journey though. I think that Dak, as of right now, gut reaction right now, no other like further looking into it. I don't see Jerry Jones paying him that.
Well, here's the other thing too that I'm thinking about as well. What about Tua? Yeah. See, because Tua, I think they want like a $50 million a year deal for Tua, but now you're seeing all these other guys making north of 50 mil.
And especially the two most recent ones with Goff and Lawrence. I'm sorry, I don't think you can justify paying Tua more than either of them.
I don't think you can, from a guy who ranked him 19th out of 32. I don't think you can do it. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but you're right. I mean, now we're getting to that point where it's like, in baseball, Shohei Ohtani is making $70 million a year, and he's a good player. Right now he's making $70 million a year. Sold on the idea that he's a two-way player. He's only doing one thing because he had surgery. So,
Well, Rick, technically, he's only making $2 million right now.
No, I mean that is true. I'm sure. But the bookie lost the other $16 million a year right now.
Accurate.
But
deferred money is an amazing thing,
right? And so now, like I said, now we're going to reach that point where in 5 years' time, we're going to find somebody who's going to be paid $100 million a year. Like Shador Sanders is going to make a deal. He's going to make $150 million in a single season.
Yep.
And it's like,
dude, it's going to happen in the NBA within the next like 5-6 years.
Oh yeah, and it's like at what point does it just become ridiculous? It already is. But at what point do we get even more chaos, pun intended? And
at what point does money lose meaning?
At what point does money lose its value, man?
Is this good for the economy right now that these guys are signing for this?
No, I think we're all expecting the next collapse. The next Great Depression is going to happen. We're all going to be eating a ramen and standing in line waiting for a hat. I guess I don't know, but I don't know what they did in the 30s. But
that sounds about right.
Yeah. Well, I do think it's funny that in the latter part of the 1920s and then the 1930s we had the Great Depression, and we're slowly creeping towards 2029.
Don't say that.
30s. Listen, all I'm saying is that 4 years after the pandemic, we had the exact same Super Bowl, Chiefs-Niners, right? Are we not experiencing deja vu here? Is history not repeating itself? And aren't we, if we're not reading up on history and heeding history, doomed to repeat it? So when does President Dyson take over, the next vacuum guy to take over and be the president that leads us into the Great Depression?
Oh, we're screwed.
We're done for. We're done for. Absolutely done for.
Oh my God! Speaking of being done for, that's this episode.
Yay!
What a transition right there, ladies and gentlemen. But before I get to it, Rick, we're gonna do one now, right? I don't think I'm.
Yeah. As you said, I got a bunch of things that I've been saving up for. So,
yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a rant podium to end this episode.
Yeah.
By the way, even though the time might go over 60, we finished all the NFL news talk in 60 minutes. Let's go.
We did exactly because none of my rant topics were about the NFL, so we're good there. Number 3. Since we're doing this show live, the current leader of the U.S. Open is a guy named Ludvig Aberg from Sweden, who spells his name with an A with like the circle over it, the Swedish, which apparently, according to the Swedish alphabet and the whatever alphabet we follow, is after the letter Z. But it's a letter A. How stupid is that? That the letter A with a symbol over it is after the letter Z in certain alphabets. Like, why? Because it's an A with a defect? It's an A with an asterisk? Is that the problem? Like we're putting it at the back of the alphabet? Okay, great. So we're segregating the alphabet back to having A's and B's that have things over them behind the letter Z, which is the worst letter of the alphabet completely. Sorry, Zucker. Number 2 on my rant podium list here. This is just going to be a very short and quick one, nice and easy here. Logan Paul's annoying. And number one on my rant podium list here. We have a problem in our society right now. And the problem that we have in our society is competitive eating. Why is this a thing? Like, I'm sure you've heard the news that Joey Chestnut is out of the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest because how dare you support Impossible Meats and vegan meats? How dare you support them, right? I mean, first of all, I've had vegan food pretty recently. And it's actually very good. The vegan food that I had, I'll give them a shout out because I love their stuff. Secret Vegan Kitchen here in the New York area. They do a corn dog that is wrapped in ramen noodles. Ramen noodles with the breading, like veggie flakes on the top, and like chipotle mayo on top of the vegan corn dog itself. Delicious. They also do a street corn dog, which is like the elote, like the street corn, like the Mexican. Like they're really good stuff. Potato chip corn dog, very, very good. Classic corn dog, very, very good. Vegan stuff. And you know what? When I'm indulging myself in that, I don't feel bad about it because it could be deep fried and battered, but it's healthier. So Joey Chestnut, being the 14-time Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Competition, maybe he's thinking about his life post-competitive eating, going to vegan food, trying to be a little healthier. But, George Shea and the Major League Eating, those guys that wear the damn stupid straw hats and the suits in 95-degree weather on July 4th on Coney Island can just go, drown themselves in a deep fryer vat of Nathan's hot dogs at this point. Like, why are we so bent out of whack about this that we now are having a Netflix special where Chestnut and Kobayashi are going to be doing what exactly? Eating hot dogs on Netflix? It's been that the WWE is going to Netflix. Now we have competitive eating going to Netflix. What's next? My Little Pony on Netflix? Come on now. Like ridiculous. Competitive eating is disgusting. First and foremost, like I don't understand why people do that. Like, why you think that is a good thing to do? It reminds me of I don't even remember what it reminds me of because there's nothing in my brain that can remind me of anything that competitive eaters do. But the guy who had the Ultimate Warrior makeup, Eater X, he did it. Matt Stoney does YouTube videos of all the things that he can eat. It's just like, why are we glorifying engorging ourselves?
Well, especially these guys that somehow don't gain any weight from this. That's the thing that upsets me the most. If I ate half of what these guys eat in these competitive eating episodes, I'm going to be on my 600-pound life.
But you know what they do? They don't eat for 4 days afterwards, basically. And it's also a matter of the stupid, hot dogs are one thing, but the stupidity and the range of the stupidity of competitive eating challenges is just like fried pickles can be an eating challenge. It's Buffalo wings is an eating challenge. There was a guy, and this is not really verified, but there was a guy who was a competitive eater who apparently had this condition where he could digest anything, and so apparently over a 2-year period he ate pieces of a Cessna, and didn't die from it, but died, I guess, walking across traffic and getting hit by a bus or whatever it was. I don't know, but why?
Yeah.
Why do we glorify this as a society? Just enough. I cannot look at a hot dog the same way, like a Nathan's hot dog. I cannot look at it the same way ever again. Knowing that this guy Chestnut put 76 dogs in his mouth in a 10-minute period. It's just. You want to talk about insane? We're gonna have him break 100 dogs in 10 minutes at some point. And he's gonna die on sight. This man has a wife, I'm sure they want to have kids at some point, but his gastrointestinal system is too messed up as it is to even consider stomaching the fact of having a child. Chestnut. Golly. If you're going to the cookout on July 4th, avoid the hot dogs. Go for the burgers or go for something else that is not going to make you sick, Just do that. Or go vegan. Vegan's good.
The man, the myth, the legend himself, Joey Chestnut, one of the greatest of all time, right up there in the Mount Rushmore of champions, denied a chance to become a 17-time world champion. Would have broken Ric Flair's record, baby. Whoa!
But not our Truth's record.
Oh, never. That'll stand the test of all times.
Yep.
Forever and ever and ever.
Good times. Good
times indeed. This was a good time, ladies and gentlemen, for us. A fun little episode we got to do here. Chaos After Dark around the NFL very quickly, and a fun red podium at the end. This is just a quick one, ladies and gentlemen. Honestly, I was kind of surprised to see that there was this much NFL news. We got to talk about it. We ran through it all. The next couple weeks in terms of us reacting to news is going to be a bit slow. I will say this will be the last properly live episode for just a stretch of time, but don't worry, we will have some content for you guys to hold you over. In the meanwhile, I think you guys might enjoy it. It'll just be some fun games, and then towards the beginning of July, things will be back to normal. You'll have at least 2 of us here. Which 2 will it be? Who knows? You'll have to wait and find out here on the Sports Agents of Chaos YouTube channel. Podfather, thank you so much for joining me once again. And ladies and gentlemen, from the Ice Band to all of you, we had another fun episode, and wait till next time to enjoy more fun, football, and chaos. See you all next time.